He is faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But over the years, the character seems to have brought with him substantial misfortune. From death to financial ruin, to career loss, to physical and mental afflictions, to bizarre accidents, and even to accusations of sexual misconduct, a spooky curse seems to haunt many connected to this iconic story. Are all of these things sheer coincidences, or is something darker at work? Of course, I'm talking about the legendary Superman curse. Hi, I'm Tamworth Grice. Welcome to my channel, the Tamworth Grice Files. Cases that are spooky, macabre, mysterious, supernatural, and just plain weird. In this video, I'll talk about the Superman curse. And in each instance, for each of my cases, I have a personal connection to the story, just as I have to this one. So be sure to stick around to the end to hear that. Let's talk about the Superman curse, and we'll start with the most obvious one. George Reeves played Superman in the 1950s TV show, but his acting career began in 1939 when he was cast in a small but noticeable role in Gone with the Wind. After a few more forgettable roles, in June 1951, Reeves was offered the chance to star in a new TV show based on the comic book Adventures of Superman. Almost overnight, he was a national celebrity, so much so that audiences laughed when he appeared on screen in 1953 in From Here to Eternity, and so producers left most of that film role on the cutting room floor. He quickly became so recognizable as Superman that it was nearly impossible for him to find other roles. This brought financial difficulties. Nevertheless, in 1958, he became engaged to the beautiful socialite Leonore Lemon, but just days before the wedding was to take place, he died of a gunshot to the head at his home in Benedict Canyon. Who pulled the trigger is still a mystery. His death at 45 was deemed a suicide due to his financial and career problems. Strangely, the second Superman actor in this series of curses had a similar last name to the first, Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve started acting with an impressive list of stage performances. By 1974, he had won a role in a TV soap opera. 4 years later, he was cast as the lead in the big-budget film Superman, with stars Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. He would go on to appear in 4 more films in the franchise, but then tragedy struck. While competing in an equestrian event, he fell from his horse. His injuries left him paralyzed from the neck down. He was always hopeful that he would walk again, but he never did. Yet, just as he seemed to be making a slow recovery, he developed an infection and died from the drugs used to treat it. He was 52. Christopher's devoted wife, Dana, stayed loyal and by his side throughout his disability. But in August 2025, just 10 months after Christopher's death, it was announced that she had lung cancer. She had never smoked, but had been exposed to secondhand smoke as a former singer at nightclubs. She died the following year at age 44. Before Christopher Reeve and George Reeves donned the cape, there was Kirk Alyn. Kirk Alyn played Superman in 2 low-budget 1940s serials, and like George Reeves, he was unable to find acting work thereafter due to typecasting. He was stuck doing voice work, commercials, and screen roles that were often uncredited. He eventually developed Alzheimer's. Curse number 5 is Lee Quigley, a child actor from London, England, who performed as the infant Superman in the 1978 film. He never appeared in another movie. From an unstable home and bullied at school, he began using intoxicating substances. He passed away at 14 from inhaling solvent fumes. Curses number 6 and 7 are the writer and artist team Jerry Siegler and Joe Shuster, the creators of Superman, who unfortunately sold the rights to their creation to DC Comics for a one-time payment of only $130 in March 1938. After that, they spent the rest of their lives trying to regain the rights. In the late 1940s, Shuster's eyesight began to fail, and although he had distance vision, he was unable to work as an artist. He took a job as a delivery man and at one point dressed in shabby clothes, the only attire he could afford. He made a delivery to the DC Comics building, and apparently some of the employees knew who he was and let the CEO know he was there. The CEO gave him $100 and told him to buy a decent coat. By 1976, Shuster was in a charity nursing home and was almost totally blind. Writer Siegel fared little better. According to court papers, his net worth before his divorce settlement in 1948 was only $29,000. He had freelance jobs through the years, but in 1959, he was barely able to pay his bills, and he lived in a one-bedroom apartment with his family. In the 1960s, he was working at a low-paying job as a typist. Learning in 1975 that a Superman movie, the one with Christopher Reeve, was about to be made, he let the press know about his and his artist partner's poverty and that they had created the title character. Within a year or two, an apparently embarrassed Warner Brothers Studios gave each of the men a pension of $20,000 a year, which was later up to $30,000, with the condition that both forever renounce all rights to anything related to the franchise. Siegler died in his 80s and Shuster in his late 70s. Marlon Brando, deemed by many the greatest actor who ever lived, Godfather star Marlon Brando played Superman's father in the 1978 film. 12 years later, his son Christian shot and killed his half-sister Cheyenne's boyfriend and served 5 years in prison. And then, in 1995, Brando's daughter Cheyenne committed suicide. Brando himself died just 3 months before his co-star Christopher Reeve. Margaret Kidder starred as Lois Lane opposite Christopher Reeve. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 1988, but refused treatment. 2 years later, she was in a car crash that injured her spine and left her temporarily disabled. In 1996, during a manic episode, she was missing for days until she was found by a homeowner in the backyard of a Glendale apartment residence. Meanwhile, she had spent all her money and was nearly destitute. Always denying the existence of the curse, Kidder died, possibly by suicide, in 2018. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was a supremely talented comedian who influenced an entire generation of comics before appearing as Gus Gorman in Superman 3 in 1983. Pryor had had a crippling drug addiction that at one point led him to attempt suicide by pouring rum on his clothes and setting himself on fire. In 1986, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. In 1990, at age 50, Pryor had a heart attack and had triple bypass surgery. He had another heart attack in 2005 and died at 65. The Fleischer brothers. Max and Dave Fleischer established their own company, Fleischer Studios, which originated the Betty Boop character, for example, and produced a series of animated Superman cartoons in the 1940s. However, the two brothers had a falling out, and as a result, the studio suffered financial ruin. Their operation was sold to Paramount in 1942, and the brothers were both fired. Both lived to old age and continued to work in the film industry, but they never recaptured their former glory as owners of their own studio. Max died in abject poverty in a charity hospital, and Dave died of a stroke. The most recent victim of the curse was a celebrated actor, two-time Academy Award winner, and very famous individual Gene Hackman, who played Superman's nemesis Lex Luthor in the 1978 film and in two sequels. Hackman was tragically found dead at his New Mexico home in February 2025. He was suffering Alzheimer's, and his wife, his caregiver, had apparently died on their property a week before he did. But no one, including Hackman in his Alzheimer's state, knew that she had died, and his body went undiscovered until his was found as well. His cause of death was starvation because she had been unable to feed him, cardiac arrest, and advanced Alzheimer's disease. One more curse is director Bryan Singer. He is a well-known filmmaker who directed Superman Returns in 2006. At the time, he'd already been accused of sexual assault, but beginning in 2014, he was accused of additional sexual assaults of minors, including at least one boy whom he allegedly drugged and raped. In another case, he was accused of acts of gender violence against a male minor. In 2019, the magazine The Atlantic claimed 4 more underage boys were assaulted by Singer. Singer had directed a film about Freddie Mercury, and it had previously been nominated for GLAAD Awards, but the nomination was withdrawn. At about the same time, Singer was fired as director for the sword and sorcery film Red Sonja. Now, how does the curse relate to me? First, when I was young, I had a babysitter on Saturday afternoons. At that time, a TV station was showing afternoon reruns of the George Reeves Superman series. Anna, my babysitter, loved Superman and would always watch the Superman show without fail. This went on for months and months, and then one Saturday she didn't show up. I overheard my parents talking about it, and apparently her boyfriend had beat her up so badly that she couldn't come to babysit for me. She did return, but he beat her up several times again. I've always wondered if this somehow was the curse at work, but she finally left the boyfriend and became a university administrator. Secondly, a few years ago, I went to see a Superman movie at a theater. And when I came out of the theater, the side of my car was bashed in, and there was a note on the windshield. The note was signed by 3 witnesses who saw an elderly woman hit my car and got a description of her vehicle and her license plate. They said in the note they didn't think she even knew she hit me. The police came, and because she lived just a few blocks away, they took me over to the house of the elderly woman who'd hit my car. She was a very sweet old lady who lived alone. Her son lived nearby, and when he saw the police car in front of the house, he showed up immediately. He tried to blame the whole thing on me, saying something like my car was probably already bashed in and I was just trying to blame it on her. But the police officer immediately took him to task and said, "Sir, we have 3 witnesses with a signed statement, and your mother is accused of leaving the scene of an accident, which is a very serious crime." The old lady began to cry, and I really felt bad for her at that point because, again, she probably didn't even know she upset me. She was very worried about what kind of trouble she would get into. I wasn't that upset about my car. I mean, after all, insurance would fix it, but I felt terrible that I was making her upset. Anyway, the officer and I left with her son staying behind, comforting the mother. Insurance did indeed pay for my car to get fixed. But I've never watched another Superman movie since then. So, what do you think? Do you believe there is a Superman curse? Did all of these things happen because of the Superman story? Or are they all just weird coincidences? If there's not a curse, how would you explain these occurrences? And have you ever personally had a bad experience connected with the Superman franchise? Let me know in the comments. This video has touched on psychological issues surrounding such things as self-harm, bipolar disorder, dementia, depression, substance abuse, sexual abuse, etc. If you or anyone you know is struggling with these or similar issues, in the U.S., you can call or text 988, that's 988, to reach a crisis line. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7. Viewers outside the U.S. can find international hotlines at www.findahelpline.com. That's www.findahelpline.com, which lists local numbers worldwide. Help is available. You need not face these challenges alone. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to view this video. And if you enjoyed it, I hope that you will like it, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. I really appreciate you as my audience, and your support means the world to me. This is Tamworth Grice signing off until next time. Until then, stay wonderful, stay weird, and have beautiful dreams.